All right, we are recording. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Those of you who've been here previously, I want to welcome you back and thank you for joining the second installment of our full body wellness after paralysis series. Tonight, we are going to focus on why mental health matters and the mental and emotional aspects of life after spinal cord injury. You may have noticed that your cameras are not on, but you should be able to see our panelists. We're definitely going to allow some time for questions and answers at the end. So please feel free to utilize the chat feature and add any questions that you may have throughout our conversation. We definitely would love to hear from all of you. Um, the Hope Talk is going to be recorded and it's going to live on our YouTube channel. We'll be sure to email you that link once we have it. And if you missed it, our first talk in this series, which focuses on physical health after paralysis, is currently living on our YouTube channel right now for your viewing pleasure. One quick disclaimer, this webinar is on mental health. It's intended for educational and informational purposes only, does not constitute medical or psychiatric advice. If you are experiencing a mental health crisis or require immediate support, please contact emergency services, a crisis hotline, or a qualified healthcare professional in your area. Views expressed by our speakers and panelists are their own and should not be considered a substitute for professional diagnosis, treatment, or individualized care. So important, got that out of the way. One last thing before we get started, I just want to give a big thank you to United Access for sponsoring this Hope Talk series. United Access has been a great partner to have throughout this series of talks. They can help guide you to the mobility equipment that meets your life, your goals, and your budget. And we just want to share a quick video that will tell you a little bit more about United Access. So please stand by. All right. A big thank you again to United Access for their support of what we have going on now. So let's get into some things. Maybe we can start out and have our panelists give a little introduction so we can find out about them. Just looking on my screen, maybe we'll go first with Stevie.
Oh, okay. Hello, I am Stevie Van Osdale. I am a licensed mental health counselor in the state of Florida. I am also a qualified supervisor for anybody learning how to become a counselor in the state of Florida. I am also a spinal cord injury survivor of 20 years now, officially last month. I was injured in a car accident in high school. I did outpatient rehab with Andy many moons ago, and really was on the path of becoming a therapist before my accident, but after the accident really solidified the path of doing this professionally. I specialize in working with folks, not so much as with disability and SCI stuff, but more of a kind of connected piece, which is the PTSD and the CPTSD that often evolve from these injuries. And I also have worked in the field of suicide prevention for a really long time and crisis intervention.
They probably also, unfortunately, things that also have some crossover into our disability world, right?
Yeah, yeah. Because usually some type of crisis occurred that happened with it. And I would say that also thoughts of suicide and things are pretty closely related to the journey of recovery as well.
Yeah, unfortunate reality. Well, thanks for being here, Stevie. Aaron, your turn.
Hi, I'm Erin. I'm 30 years old. I live in Florida now. I used to be in Boston. Um, I recently got married, so I live with my husband, Jack. He's also my caregiver. I'm starting school at University of Florida for mental health counseling next month, so I'm really excited about that. Um, what else? I was injured in July 2017, so when I was 21. I sat on a hammock that was attached to a chimney on one side and it collapsed on top of me. So I'm a C5, C6 quadriplegic. Um, I'm very passionate about disability rights, and I just really want to be a mental health counselor for, the disability community, honestly, and anyone else that needs help.
Awesome. Thanks, Aaron. Um, I guess for those of you who didn't watch our first thing in Hope Talk series, my name's Andy. I'm part of the outreach team at Help Hope Live. I also have a spinal cord injury. I have a C6 spinal cord injury that I got in 2005. That's how I met Stevie at rehab. Um, I am also a big kind of advocate, like both women on our panelist, big advocate for people with disabilities. I am very involved in the adaptive sports world. Really believe that activity and adaptive sports, whether you're an athlete or not, I really feel like getting involved in stuff like that is a really important bedrock to happy, healthy, successful life post injury. But that's a different topic. So let's get on to our mental health stuff. I guess one thing I just wanted to mention before we get into our questions, and I think it's, maybe an important data point to start with, which is one, acknowledging that mental health challenges certainly are not unique to the disabled population. But adults with disabilities report instances of mental distress almost 5 times as often as adults without disabilities. So this is a major issue in our community and certainly worthy of our discussion. Um, so I guess going into things, I don't know who wants to kind of take first stab at this, but maybe to get things rolling the question I have for both of you is. Um, I guess did either one of you, having both of you been hurt um, later in life, not born this way, or not so young that you don't remember anything else, did you guys have a relationship with your mental health pre-injury? If so, how did that relationship change post-injury? Or if you didn't necessarily have a relationship with your mental health pre-injury, what did it become post-injury? Who wants to take that one first?
I guess I can go first thinking about it. It's actually something I was reflecting on a little bit before we started. Um, because I think the reality is before being injured, none of our lives are perfect, right? So we have our own things that we're already dealing with, we're already sifting through, and then adding an injury into it just kind of makes a recipe for an even more intense mental health experience. And so for me, I was only 17 when I was injured. So I was, just kind of starting to get out there in the world. Um, I did have some, wouldn't say significant mental health stuff, but bigger stuff than I think I had realized before going on. I didn't have the most stable home life before. I didn't have um, things were not easy before me before the car accident, and the accident only like highlighted those things and made them more intense and worse, and made the instability at home more intense as well. Um, and so I think I didn't always know what was because of the accident and what was because of what was happening before the accident. And then also adding in that, for a period, I was still a minor living at home. I really didn't have much autonomy or power to change my situation. Financially, I also had no power to change my situation, and I just kind of had to deal with it. Um, and so it took a really long time. I mean, like a decade, I think, to begin to kind of pull apart what was the accident, what was life, what was society not making life easy for a person with a disability, um, and really beginning to like, I guess, heal from all of that. Um,
Yeah, and it's
and
not like the challenges that you had post-injury go away suddenly after you hurt yourself, right? Like those things are still there. Maybe
yeah,
they're even bigger, and you have new challenges, and you're trying to navigate a map that's way more confusing than maybe it was even beforehand, right?
exactly. And also, people have expectations of you to still be the same person that you were before and maybe depend on you in ways that you're not capable of giving anymore. Um, and so, yeah, it's all really messy. And then I think we're all just kind of expected to just kind of move past it and be grateful to be alive. It's like, well, it's not that easy.
Right. How about you, Aaron? How did your relationship with mental health change, or how did you discover it post-injury?
So I feel like I'm like the opposite of Stevie in the sense that I never struggled with my mental health before. So it was like new to me to like have to wake up and focus on my mood and my, just how I was feeling and making myself be positive and ready for the day. So, I was in college, so I was going into my senior year of college, and I was very independent and I was working and all this stuff. So going from that to that being all taken away was really, really hard. And then um, because I was injured in July, then once fall came and all my friends went back to school, that was really hard because I was just super isolated. And I was with my mom, and I never went back home. We just stayed in Boston, got an apartment, and so that first 6 months was really hard. And what really helped was just going to PT and OT and basically surrounding myself with as many people as I could and keeping busy. But I think what was great is 6 months after I went back to school to finish my last semester of college. And I think that really helped me. It was hard for your mental health because you're going back to school, senior year, and everything is so different because now I'm in a wheelchair. I was not doing very well 6 months after my injury. I was struggling. Um, but yeah, I think that just being around people and being busy was a really good distraction.
Yeah,
I
definitely. Go ahead, Stevie.
I was just gonna say, I also think another th factor that also happens is side effects from medication.
Mhm.
Um, I know that for a period of time, I was really contemplating suicide, which ended up being a side effect of the medication in the first 6 months after my injury. And it was really hard because I didn't know how to talk to anybody about it too. And I was really afraid that if I did, that it would be a problem. And so I ended up confiding in a teacher that helped me figure that out. Um, but yeah, so it's like, what is old, what is new, what is medication, what is not, like really trying to navigate this whole new world and not necessarily having any skills to figure it out.
Yeah, nobody really prepares for a spinal cord injury, right? It just happens and then you have to react to it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think, for me, I was 25, 26 when I had my injury, so a little bit older. Um, and, looking back on things, I think like I definitely had mental health challenges before I got hurt, that I don't think that I was maybe fully aware of or was adequately addressing. And I think after I got hurt, those things were still there, like I said, and now there's new challenges. I
Mhm.
think it wasn't really until after I got hurt that I think that I had started having a more productive relationship with my mental health and understanding that some of these things were challenges prior to my injury that I'm now just kind of discovering post-injury. And for me, it was like about like some of it was about understanding like what things were always there and maybe they're just still there or changed now that I have a disability and what things are new and just related to that disability. I think about myself a lot with like body image. Throughout my entire life, even before I got hurt, I never had a good body image. I still don't. And after having a spinal cord injury, like that's still a challenge, but it's different. It's like the same but different too. Um, and yeah, all of that stuff are just kind of works in progress. Um, but I think there's always, I think there's stuff you can think abstractly about disability and say, oh, if this happened to me, like these are clearly the things that could be challenges and this is what I might struggle with. But I think there's all sorts of other stuff that just pops up, things that we wouldn't expect, that we don't know about or whatever. So I'm thinking like, what are some of the like emotional or psychological challenges post-injury that maybe you didn't expect or like hit you like a ton of bricks and you really had to deal with?
I think one that comes to my mind that took me a really long time to figure out was how much people expected me to be okay. And, they really needed me to smile and tell them I'm happy and I'm fine and I'm gonna be fine and I'll be the same person I was and to be grateful. And, um, the first few years, I really embraced that and was like, oh, yes, I'll be poster child of happiness for everybody to make them feel better about what's happened. And it really wasn't until I met another person who had been catastrophically injured in a different way. And people were starting to tell her those types of things. And she was like adamant of like, no, I'm not. I'm not going to smile. I'm not going to be grateful. And you guys can just deal with it. And it was like, oh, I could be mad. That actually sounds really nice. Because I am mad and I am really upset. And I really, some days didn't really want to smile and comfort everybody about how terrible this is. Um, and so that I don't think I would have expected that. But then again, also that was my role in my systems before injury. So it makes sense that that was continued. Um, and so it took me a really long time to embrace being upset, like really just being like devastated by what had happened to me, and that it didn't mean that I had to stop living or stop going forward or stop moving. And it also didn't mean that I wasn't grateful to still be alive. And I mean, honestly, sometimes I wasn't grateful and that was okay too. Um, so I think that was a really difficult thing to navigate, especially being so young. I was just barely, my frontal cortex was barely online. So,
I think too that just maybe piggybacking off of what you were talking about, like being okay with not being okay. Something for me, and sorry to jump in front of you, Aaron. I'll let you respond in a second, but something that I was thinking about, Stevie, that I'm sure you guys always get this, and I always think about is, these people, whether they're family members or coworkers or strangers or friends or whatever, talking to you, telling you how much you inspire them or how inspirational you are, and feeling like, that's great that you're inspired by what I'm doing, but how does that help me get a job or get a girlfriend or these struggles? Like,
mhm,
it's like save the inspiration and give me some damn help
mhm.
is, kind of what I wanted to say. And it's hard because these people mean well, right? They're not trying to say something offensive to you, not realizing that like just like me being alive shouldn't be inspirational to you. If it inspires you, help me. That's
Yeah.
how I felt for a long time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Aaron, did you
It
have any challenges that you didn't expect?
Um, One that always comes to mind is right when I got to rehab. Like I said, I did struggle with mental health before, so I'd never done therapy, I'd never done anything like that. And they send in like a psychologist, and I had a really bad experience with him. I don't, I don't know. I don't know if it was, I just wasn't ready. I had just gotten there. Like I had just gotten there. And he said, everyone leave the room. And he said, now think of like the happiest moment in your life. And he said stuff to me like, you're never, he said, how do you feel about never playing field hockey again? I hadn't even thought about that. So,
Mm.
so that was very upsetting, but it also then scared me to like want to go to therapy ever again because I was like such a bad experience. So yeah, so I didn't, so that was really hard. And then the other thing that bothered me is they put me on Prozac and they said, we put everyone on it. And I wasn't like struggling that much mentally yet. So then when I got home, I had to get off of it and my mood was all over the place. And it was really hard to get off of it. And so I wasn't expecting that challenge. But yeah, just like Stevie was saying, like the medications you're on, it's hard and you have brain fog and you don't feel like yourself. So you're like, how am I supposed to like cope with this and figure out, is it me? Is it the injury? Is it the medication? So I didn't expect those challenges and I kind of felt like they could have been avoided.
Yeah, I also had a really bad therapy experience right after that kind of pushed me on this trajectory of mental health counselor as well, where because my best friend was also killed in the car accident, and I finally wanted to go to therapy. It was about a year after, and was asking for some help. And I remember the therapist telling me, as I was telling her, like, I can't golf anymore and I can't do, all these athletic things that I was involved in, and I miss my best friend and he's gone and it's so unfair. And she was like, I think you're really struggling with anxiety. Let's work on breathing. And I just looked at her and I said, "You're so dumb," and left.
Good.
It's like, it's not anxiety that I'm dealing with. It's grief and identity lost and just profound trauma. And yeah, anxiety was a part of it, but she totally missed it. Totally missed it.
So I think that this kind of brings us in a good way to our next topic. One thing that I just wanted to mention really briefly, maybe, is like sometimes for me, when we're talking about, challenges, it's maybe not always about what the challenge is, but it's about the fact that it seems like life is like never-ending challenges. It's just one thing after another. And I realize that that's not unique to living life with disability, but sometimes like the time and the energy and everything that goes into it living with a disability, like it is different,
Mhm.
living. So it's about this the constant barrage of challenges and no relief from that and what that does mentally, to you on a day-to-day basis.
Yes.
Mhm.
Um, But, we were talking about these challenges. I guess, to move on from that is, um, what coping strategies have you guys find or support that have helped you manage the challenges? And maybe also like what habits do you have that can help maintain good mental health? And how do you self-advocate or like how do you get that support, whether you're self-advocating or having somebody else advocate for you? Like how do you affect those things?
Ugh, that is an excellent question. So I think that for me, the answer is kind of twofold. So historically, it has been, well, therapy, finding the right therapist, really, not just, I think a lot of times we think that whatever therapist we get assigned to is going to be the right therapist and that we just have to stick with them. And that's really not true at all. I say that finding a good therapist is a lot like dating and a lot like finding a really good hairstylist, right? So you got to you got to keep going until you find the person that you vibe with, that you connect with, that your values align, that they seem like they understand you. Because so much of healing is through the therapeutic relationship and feeling connected and feeling understood and feeling safe enough to talk about, the mental load of being disabled and the really vulnerable, like secret kind of cobwebby corners of our lives that we really don't want anybody to see. So if you don't trust a person as your therapist, you're not going to trust them with those cobweb corners. So I do want to say that that is really important. So just because that one therapist really sucked and never wanted to see them again, that's fair. Still a therapist out there for you. You just got to find them, which is hard and frustrating and exhausting and shouldn't be that way, but it is that way. Um, and so finding the right therapist really helped me. I have been in therapy pretty consistently since my accident, with maybe a year or two off here and there, depending on, moving or my therapist's retiring and trying to find a new person. Um, and then the next one is finding good help, good, consistent, reliable help. And I was really privileged to have my mom for 18 years to be able to take care of me. And she was the most dedicated advocate that there is. Andy's probably watched her making her phone calls, holding her binder, momming everybody at the rehab floor and just being a force. And I really credit her to being, where I am now. And so she unfortunately passed away almost 2 years ago. And so I'm trying to figure that out again now of like, how do I take care of myself now that my mom isn't here? How do I slow down? How do I explain to other people, these are things that I've got to watch out for and worry about when my mom just intuitively knew because she was there from the very beginning. Um, and I've said to a few doctors that I feel like she knew my injury better than I did. And I'm learning things about myself that I had no clue was there because she just took care of it all.
I was
Um,
gonna say, do you like on the other side of this tragedy, the tragedy that you had to go through, do you think that this is also, do you think it's like forced you to have to maybe understand, or like some of the stuff that your mom was carrying, or that weight that she was pushing up the hill, and now you're like, oh crap, this is stuff that she was carrying this water for me for a while, so now I got to understand this about myself and whatever, or find another person that can, that can help me carry this load.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it really has given me a lot of perspective of like the level of dedication that she had to me and like how hard she really worked all the time to just make sure that my life um was never easy, but easier than it is now. My husband helps me and now, and he's kind of stepped in as like the main caregiver, and I do have helpful people here, but nobody's gonna really love you like your mom, um, or even take care of you like your mom. And so, um, I've had to learn how to really like articulate what I'm thinking and teach people like you know, something as simple as like, this is where I like to keep my catheters next to the toilet because it needs to be in this way. And, the box can't be switched in a different direction. And just all, the little things where it's like, that shouldn't make any difference, right? Where a box is sitting. But it just feels like, having to take the extra 5 seconds to like switch the box so I can open it in a different way is exhausting when, like we've talked about the million other things we have to think about all day long. Um, and so I don't know if we've even answered the question that you asked, but just I am finding and learning new ways to cope now. And also, as I've aged, I've had to figure out new ways to cope as my body slows down and needs to recover in different ways. And, being over 20 years of being injured, it really does take a toll on my system. I'm also a mom of two very young, very active girls that um, demands my time to be spent in a really different way than it was, 8 years ago when I was, married and I had my mom and still working on my degrees. Um, Life is a lot faster now than it was back then.
Aaron, how about you? Do you have like some coping strategies or habits or anything like that that you go to help maintain good mental health or kind of kick you out of bad mental health cycles?
I think the biggest thing for me was goal setting, and I did it in the beginning and I do it now. But short-term goals such as, just my PT goals, school, like finishing school, getting into a manual chair because I was in a power chair, just working at that, and then also having long-term goals like maybe I'll transfer one day, maybe I'll dress myself one day, like maybe I'll be more independent, and just constantly working at those goals and constantly setting new ones. I don't know if that's considered a distraction or what, but it helped me to focus on something else besides my situation, my injury, and where I was at. The biggest thing I think then was also learning how to use my phone and my iPad, and then getting on social media and connecting with other people with spinal cord injury, other girls my age, same level. That helped me a lot. And I, had a lot of questions. And then the other thing that I loved was I was a peer mentor at Spalding, and as much as like people are like, "Oh, that's so nice of you," I'm like, but it helped me. Like I'm still friends with people that I was peer mentoring for, and like it was just cool to give back, but it was also cool to see how far I'd come and then be able to mentor people and become friends with them. So I think that's definitely was a coping strategy. And I still do a lot of that today. So,
I know for
Yeah.
me, like a mindset battle is never ending with me my whole life, and certainly in my mindset feeds into my mental health, my physical health, like all those different things. And I know for me, something that took me a long time to figure out, but kind of once I did, increased my ability to successfully avoid or kick myself out of bad mental health cycles is like understanding when I get in these crappy mindset um, places, understand like what that actually does to my life. And I know like what I start to do is I self-isolate. I start eating really unhealthy. I don't exercise. I start making like really unhealthy life choices like that. And for me, it's like recognizing like when I start doing that, like what I need now is human contact, healthy diet, exercise, meditation, breathing, mindfulness, like all those, things. But it's like just you can have all the tools, but like if you don't use them or you don't recognize that you need to use them, they're kind of useless, And I think it took me a long time of like digging a hole before I realized like what I needed to do to start like filling the hole back in to get out of the hole. Uh,
Yeah. I think having a safety plan is kind of what we would call it of like, okay, so what are my tools? When do I know that I need to activate them? And like, where if we're at like level 5, what do we do? How do we get ourselves out of there so we're not trapped in the hole?
yeah. And, related to this, and this also kind of goes back to I talked a little bit earlier about, sometimes it's not about like what challenges, it's about like this kind of never-ending amount of challenges. And Stevie, when you and I were talking a month or two ago, and we talked like about like burnout and fatigue from living with a spinal cord injury, whether it's the energy that you're expending or the planning or whatever. I was just wondering maybe like from a clinician's perspective, but also a personal perspective. Can you explain or talk to us a little bit about like that burnout and fatigue and kind of the mental health piece of how that impacts it?
Yeah. So I think burnout is such an interesting topic right now because I think so many people are finally acknowledging it in the workplace, but not really recognizing, how much burnout it kind of impacts those of us living with disabilities because it is a never ending kind of flood of things that we have to attend to. And I've got notes here because I was thinking about like, what are all of the things that we have to do mentally to get through the day, right? So, just thinking about, waking up in the morning and having to plan out, how am I going to go to the bathroom and how am I going to get myself dressed and what time do I have to be out of the house and what time does that mean I have to be into the car and can I plan for maybe having spasticity that's not going to allow me to do these things or
How
um
many catheters do I have to take with me when I'm leaving the house based on how long I'm going to be gone?
exactly. If I'm gonna maybe go to a new restaurant with friends, is there accessible parking? Is the parking lot gonna be, even if they say accessible parking, is the parking lot all tore up with potholes, or is somebody gonna park next to me? They say they have an accessible bathroom. How accessible is that? Like all
Is it
these
on the second floor?
second floor, and nobody knows. Is the lift gonna be broken when I get there? Um,
Probably.
yeah. Uh, and then they're going to call something accessible and it is not accessible. As well as, yeah, then also kind of, yeah, the running list of like, how many catheters do I have? When do I need to contact my DME to make sure that I'm going to get the proper shipment when I need to get it? When's my next, just all these constant lists that we're running through our minds all day long on top of existing as a person and trying to, work and have hobbies and have friendships and be productive. Um, this is constantly keeping us kind of stuck in this problem solving brain versus allowing ourselves to be in a present moment and to be just present with, whatever it is we're doing because we can't really risk being present all the time. Um, because that could mean I leave the house and I don't have enough catheters, or I leave the house and I don't have, backup clothes or things like that. And so burnout comes a lot quicker for us, I think a lot more often. And then I think also because life happens so fast, um, after injury and we kind of try to reintegrate into the world so fast and so quickly that we don't always have coping skills to get us out of the hole. So like what you were talking about earlier, Andy, of like, okay, now I recognize I'm in the hole. How do I get myself out? And then also how do I fill this hole up so that I don't get back in it? Um, I think the unfortunate reality is that the hole's always going to be there. It's just a matter of like, can I maybe recognize it before I'm about to fall in? Um, and maybe I won't, and that's okay. Um, but as far as like psychological impacts, kind of the red flag signs of like, hey, burnout is coming, is decision fatigue, right? So if you start feeling like I can't decide what I want to eat for dinner, I can't make one more decisions or I'm going to lose it. As well as kind of the implications of chronic stress. So chronic stress feels a little different than like appropriate stress, I guess, right? So if you're like in a car and somebody kind of stops really quickly in front of you, that's appropriate stress. Chronic stress is that just low level like hum or vibration that we're feeling, and no matter what we do, really gets rid of it. That's an indicator that burnout is probably coming. Emotional exhaustion, right? So that is really kind of numbing out in a way where maybe something that I should be reacting to, I can't react to because I'm just done. I'm totally taxed. I have nothing left in the tank. Um, Another one is irritability. So you're numbed out maybe to like happiness or joy or sadness, but really irritable and quick to snap at maybe your caregiver or your loved ones that you live with. Um, and then adding to that is also reduced motivation, right? So also what you're talking about, Andy, of like, I don't want to eat well, even though I know that this is going to make me feel better. I don't want to move my body, even though I know it's going to make me feel better. And I don't want to achieve any of these goals that I've set for myself. I'm just going to kind of wallow and engage in mind-numbing activities, right? So the doom scrolling on our phones or the reaching for substances, even, noticing, hey, I'm having, several glasses of wine throughout the week to try to numb out the chronic stress and how bad all of this feels. So really noticing too, like, are you reaching for things that are like escapism, right? So anything to get you out of the present moment, um, is a big indicator that burnout is happening. And burnout is not happening just because you don't have resilience or because you aren't strong enough. Burnout is happening because there is an ungodly amount of expectation put upon us as disabled people to be productive members of society, to be the inspirational face for all of our coworkers and our friends and our community members, all while then not being given enough support to actually live functional, productive lives. Um,
Yeah, well, and I find too that I think maybe I'll just speak for myself so I don't put words in anyone else's mouth, is that, um, for me, like I strive to be independent and self-sufficient and and do all those things and sometimes to a fault, right? And I'll get burnout and fatigue because I'm trying to do so much and be stubborn and be independent because that's what I want to be. And what we don't do a lot of times, I know I don't do it, and I think it's common with people with disabilities, is we want so much to be independent and do all the things ourselves is we don't ask for help. And sometimes we need help, and we need to realize that sometimes there's nothing wrong with asking for help. And if you're getting burned out and you're getting fatigued for things, like sometimes you do need, like it's not waving a surrender flag, or it doesn't mean that you're not independent or whatever. If you need help, like we all need help, and sometimes you just need to ask for it.
yes. Yeah. And I think a lot of times I really avoid trying to ask for help because I spend so much time trying not to think about how fragile I actually am and that like I do need help. And if I don't get the right amount of help, I could hurt myself if I'm not careful. And and then what all that means and those different things. And so I also really work hard to make it look easy. Um, and then everybody around me assumes that it is easy. And
But it's
then
not.
all of a sudden I'm like, wait a second, you guys, this is not easy. This is really awful. And they're like, oh, well, you make it easy, look easy. And so, yeah, I mean, really thinking about like how much time do you spend mentally preparing for the day and mentally preparing for what you need to do? And if we quantified that in hours, how many extra hours would you need in the day to actually be present?
Aaron, do you have any um, experience with kind of the burnout, fatigue, or overcoming it, or strategies that
I,
you use?
yeah, for me, I had a lot of health issues, mostly chronic UTIs. So I was sick a lot, and I had a lot of kidney stones, and so I had a lot of surgeries, and then I had a syrinx in my neck I had to get drained. I had a lot of surgeries, like for the first like 5, 6 years. So I almost felt like I was in such survival mode that I wasn't even able to think about my mental health because I was just thinking about my physical health and like being able to function during the day. So I don't know, like I feel like it's almost like I guess that probably was burnout, but not maybe not, I guess maybe mentally, but it was more about like my physical health, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so many of us exist in survival mode most of the time that the thought of like not to be cheesy, but like instead of surviving, to thrive is kind of a foreign concept
Yeah.
of think about how do I fight to stay present or to stay alive or to keep
Mhm.
afloat.
Yeah, and I think that moves into kind of our next piece. Like, I think all of us, like, we all want to have independent lives. We all want to, like, have an identity, maybe that's, not just tied to our disability or chair. We all want to live high quality lives. I guess the question I have for you two is like, how do you see your mental health impacting kind of your sense of independence, self-identity, quality of life? Like, are those two things connected for you guys? Or, and if so, how do you see that?
Do you have thoughts, Aaron?
For me, like being a quadriplegic, I'm just not super independent. I know some quads are, I'm just not. I want to be more independent. I'm still working at it, but I think realizing that my mood and my um, how I wake up in the morning is going to affect my caregivers. And so if you're in a bad mood or you're super cranky or not nice, that's going to affect them, and then that's going to affect the whole day. And I was lucky to just have my mom as my caregiver, and my husband, he was my boyfriend at the time, but so I was lucky. I never had to deal with random strangers, but I still like that was a weight on me to be like, I need to be positive and in a good mood, not for them, but for me to have a good day too, because it's affecting them. And then if they're in a bad mood, that's going to affect me. So that was a weird thing. I don't know if that really answers the question, but I felt like that was like kind of like affected my identity every day.
How about you, Stevie?
Yeah, I think I do think my independence is very important for my mental health. I am an incredibly stubborn, fiercely independent individual. Um, and for a long time with my mom being my main caregiver, I could hide those parts of myself and nobody else really had to see. Um, my moments of vulnerability or fragility. I broke my shoulder in the accident, and so my left arm really doesn't function so as well as it could. So even though I am a paraplegic, I do have limited range and strength and different things. And um, I also had a lot of internal injuries that have lasted. I had to have most of my intestines removed, and so that has caused a lot of gastrointestinal issues all along. And so, um, yeah, I'm not always as independent as I would like, or always as independent as people would assume a paraplegic would be because of um, my other injuries. And I remember when Andy and I were doing physical therapy out at in RIM, I would always be like, well, you're a paraplegic, Stevie, like you've got to push yourself. You've got to like you have to value the function that you have. And sometimes I would push myself like over the edge trying to be um more functional than I was. And I've had to learn now, especially like I said, as I'm getting older, that like if I want my shoulders to not give out on me in the next 20 years, I've got to maybe think about different ways to preserve them, like allowing myself to get some type of power assist wheels out in the world. Um, Finally listening to my lawyer who's been telling me that for like 15 years. And I'm like, no, I can't. Um, yeah, I think maybe my independence when I was younger, when I was first injured, was like, I have to show that this injury isn't going to stop me and I have to be able to overcome this. And if I don't feel like I'm overcoming this, it's going to feel like a failure and I'm not going to be able to get up. And now, as I transition into this, like, I guess, next stage and is like, okay, how do I take care of my body so that it can get me another 20 years or 30, ideally. Actually longer than that, hopefully. Uh,
Hopefully, right?
but yeah, just shifting my thinking of like longevity versus like, I don't know, sometimes I feel like I was just like a bull barreling through trying to just make it happen. Not really thinking about the consequences on my mental health or the mental health of those around me either. Um,
For me, I also got a lot of benefit from like really finally like maybe taking stock in and embracing some of the positive things that my accident and injury did for my life. Maybe they're not as long of a list as the things that I struggle with. Um, but like since I broke my like it's forced me to be a more patient person. I think it's forced me to be a more understanding person. I think there's a lot of things that it really just maybe I didn't want to improve, but it forced me to improve that are strengths in my life. And I think a lot of us, a lot of people with going around with disabilities, um, maybe don't always embrace our disability as a strength. And I've used this talking with people before, like we show the world too much of our Clark Kent when our disability like is our superpower and we need to show our Superman to the world and we spend too much time being Clark Kent. And maybe that's a confidence thing or an acceptance thing or, a conversation for another day. But I know for me, like embracing those positive aspects and letting that be my superpower, um, is helpful for me.
I also do think a big help for me has been finding friends who are willing to understand and like are willing to like figure it out and accommodate you and it not be a burden. And so, like if we're like me and my girlfriends are like planning a dinner out and I say, "Oh, well, that restaurant's not that accessible for me, but you guys go ahead." And then being like, "Absolutely not. We'll go somewhere else." Um, that has been like really transformative, honestly, for me and when it comes to burnout of just getting to know people who actually care and really want to know and want to accommodate is really I don't know. Yeah, it's life changing.
Do you think, I mean, you were injured young, so maybe this isn't the best question or whatever, but like, did you see those relationships change from before you got hurt to
Mm.
after, or were those people always those people and were kind of like ride or die before injury or after? Like, has your social relationships changed post injury? Um, or if not, I
Yeah.
guess not.
Yeah, no, I think they profoundly changed. There was a lot of like complexities because of my car accident and the drama that the adults created afterwards, that caused a lot of relationships to end. And there were a handful of people that like my lights just went off. They were my friends before and are still my friends, even though I live 1,200 miles away from them now. Um, and those people, yeah, they were there, they're down, they don't care. I mean, the amount of times that they probably like piggybacked me up and down stairs at bars and different things like that. Um, which I was totally down with at 20, 21, 22. Now, in my late 30s, I'm like, oh, no, 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 I'm not doing anything like that. I will stay down here. You guys go have some fun. Um, and so I think it's changed in what, I guess maybe what I'm looking for in friendship. And so like I just went on a vacation last week and one of the friends kind of called ahead a few places and asked like what does accessibility look like here and like what are your accommodations ahead of time to tell me. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. um, to just be considered in that way. And so I think maybe the intentionality has changed in how I find friends now and kind of who I would be drawn towards versus, just being friends with people because they sat next to me at the lunch table in high school.
Aaron, I want to see if you have comment about that. Before you respond, I just want to let our attendees know that we're getting towards the end here. I do want to try to answer any questions that people may have. So while we're wrapping things up, if people do have questions, I would encourage you to throw them in the chat so that we can get to them. But I guess while we're waiting on that, Aaron, did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think for me, what was weird is the people I thought would show up didn't, and the people like friends that did, I was like, oh, like not all of them, but a lot of them. It was just like really kind of cool. Like you definitely find out who your real friends are, that's for sure. And I think what was really hard for me was letting go of the friends that I was so close with that didn't adapt to my injury. And I just, you force it because you're like, you have the memories and you love them, but you're like, they're not being a friend to me anymore. They're doing the same stuff. They're not going to accessible places. They don't care. So I think letting go of that, once I finally was like, okay, like that friendship just needs to end, that definitely helped. And yeah, just um, also, like I said earlier, turning to social media, becoming friends with more people in the disability community and people that get it, that really helped. But yeah, I had some good friends that stayed and really, really care and really want to learn and want to help. And so those are the people that I made time for.
Yeah, I would agree that also the friendships and relationships that I had at RIM with folks in my outpatient rehab were like so critical for me to be able to see that, I wasn't just gonna rot away on my parents' couch for the rest of my life. Like I really
Yeah.
could have a life and people lived really full, wonderful lives. Um, that really, really helped.
Yeah, having that support network and peer group is so important. And I think, maybe some people who are newly disabled or whatever think you have to choose between, a life of like hanging out with other people in wheelchairs or being the only person who's in a wheelchair hanging out with a bunch of people who aren't. And that's not true. Like diversity and variety are good things in life. You got your friends that use chairs or whatever, and your friends that don't. And you need both of those, but definitely like having people with that shared experience of you and certainly people who have been doing it longer. It's so important to have those people in your corner um, as just that like break glass in case of emergency type person. Um, I guess we're kind of up against the end of our time here. I'm looking, and apparently we did an amazing, perfect job because nobody had a follow-up question for us about anything.
Oh.
Certainly, if people do think of something, I would encourage anyone to reach out to me, at any point. But it looks like we're kind of at the end of our questions. I want to before we go, I just want to say how grateful that we are to you, Stevie, and you, Aaron, for joining us, as well as everyone else who's joined us today. So thank you for everything. The next Hope Talk we have in this series, just to let you all know, is on nutrition and life after paralysis and why nutrition matters. So we'll have more information about that, a date and all that stuff as it gets closer. And one more big thank you to United Access for sponsoring this Hope Talk series. Yeah, and we look forward to seeing you all at the next one. And thank you everyone for joining us.